Now, I was reading a article on the NFL app, and it was talking about what teams could go from worst to first in their divisions this season. And you had the Broncos, you had a couple of other teams in there. But I think a lot of people are overlooking the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars behind the Denver Broncos have a really good shot at being able to go from last place to first place in their division. First of all, the AFC South is one of the worst divisions in the NFL. Only one team from the AFC South is going to make it to the playoffs. It's either going to be Jacksonville, Tennessee, or Indianapolis. And yes, I do think that Jacksonville has a legitimate shot at winning this division. And a lot of people are going to laugh at that. Titans fans and Colts fans are going to get mad. But you got to understand something. Trevor Lawrence was drafted number 1 overall for a reason. And he got held back by a bad head coach and coaching staff. So now you bring in a proven winner in Doug Pederson, somebody who actually knows how to manage a offense and knows how to win in the NFL. And for Trevor Lawrence, think about it like this. If Trevor Lawrence ends up peaking this year, which I definitely believe that he will, and he ends up progressing and improving, then the potential is that he could end up becoming the best quarterback in this division by the end of the season. So you look at Ryan Tannehill and you look at Matt Ryan. You have Matt Ryan, who pretty much is at the tail end of his career, and he's with a Indianapolis Colts team that is a little bit overrated. I think their defense is going to drop off slightly with the loss of their defensive coordinator and Matt Eberflus leaving for the Chicago Bears head coaching job. And then you don't really have a lot of weapons on offense. You know, it's funny because I was going back and forth with my guy Juice Alert, and he was saying how last year the Patriots weren't going to make it to the playoffs because they didn't really have a lot of explosive playmakers, right? Well, it's funny because the Indianapolis Colts don't really have a lot of explosive playmakers on offense outside of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. So, I mean, they don't have too many players that are dynamic. They also don't really have great depth at wide receiver. So for Matt Ryan, is he an upgrade from Carson Wentz? Yes. But I mean, at the same time, at least with Carson Wentz, you get a little bit of mobility. Is Matt Ryan's lack of mobility going to hurt him in the long run? Don't really know. But I think that Matt Ryan, that quarterback, gives you more consistent quarterback play. You have a quarterback who you can rely on in late game situations. But I don't think Indianapolis is going to be all that great as some people. And then Tennessee, they have some questions on the offensive line. Also, Ryan Tannehill, he was pretty okay. But as I mentioned, if Trevor Lawrence ends up peaking this year, which I believe that he will, he's going to end up becoming the best quarterback in the AFC South. So right there, with you having the best quarterback in the division, that improves your odds tremendously. Now, the offensive line is not that bad. And I said it last year, and I'm going to say it again. I think the offensive line is decent. You have Cam Robinson, one of the better left tackles in the game. Ben Bartch is okay. Tyler Shatley, okay. Brandon Sheriff has been one of the better or one of the best offensive guards in the NFL for over the last couple of years. Now, Jawan Taylor, he's probably a lost cause. It's either going to be him or Walker Little who's going to be starting at that right tackle spot. Then you also have running backs James Robinson, who right now he's injured, but he is going to end up returning at some time. And you have Travis Etienne. Now, Travis Etienne, I've already did a segment on him. Make sure that you guys go ahead and check that out. But to basically summarize my thoughts, I think that Jacksonville is going to use Travis Etienne in a bunch of different ways, not just as a pure running back, but they're going to line him up wide in the slot at wide receiver. He may return kicks and punts, so he's going to be heavily involved in the offense. Your wide receivers definitely don't give you a lot of confidence, but at the same time, I think that your receiving core at least has a little bit more depth than what the Colts have outside of Michael Pittman and Alex Pierce. You have Marvin Jones, who I think is a really good number 2. However, he is the best wide receiver that the Jaguars had on the roster last year. You pay Christian Kirk a lot of money, and Christian Kirk is coming off the best season of his career with Arizona. He definitely could end up being a really good wide receiver 1. Then you have Evan Ingram. You got Dan Arnold at tight end. So, I mean, the offense doesn't have a lot of crazy weapons, but they do have more dynamic playmakers than, say, what the Titans and the Indianapolis Colts have. Because let's be honest, the Titans have Treylon Burks, who we don't really know how good he's going to be because he hasn't played a game yet. And then you have Robert Woods, who's coming off a season-ending ACL injury. So you have Jacksonville. The wide receiving core, I think, is on the same level as Indianapolis and Tennessee. Then you look at the running back position. Okay, you don't have running backs that are as talented as Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry, but your running back room isn't no slouch neither. Now, the offensive line is a question mark, even though I think it should be decent. However, Indianapolis does have a really good offensive line, and for Tennessee, it's to be decided. Now, defensively is probably where a lot of the concerns are going to be. Okay, you look at Josh Allen, he's your best pass rusher. He's one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, former Pro Bowler. You improved the linebacker position. You got rid of Miles Jack, and you replaced him with Foye Oluokun, who is coming off a pretty good season with the Atlanta Falcons. He's a really good run stopper. Then you drafted Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd in this past year's NFL draft. But I really like the talent and depth that the Jaguars have at corner. You have Tyson Campbell, who had a really good rookie season last year. A lot of people think about how good Patrick Surtain was, but Tyson Campbell was pretty good in his own right. Then you have Shaquille Griffin, who he's up and down, but he was okay. And then you signed Darius Williams, who is going to be your slot corner. So I think that the Jaguars' cornerback group is definitely pretty solid. At safety, Rayshawn Jenkins, Andrew Sisco. Andrew Sisco does have some potential to be a solid starter in this league. Is he going to live up to that? We don't really know that much. But for Jacksonville, for any Colts fan or Titans fan just to look at Jacksonville and overlook them, I think you got to be a little bit naive, because it's not as if the Tennessee Titans and Indianapolis Colts are world beaters. It's not as if they both have some of the best rosters in the NFL. You know, their rosters do have some strong points, but they also have some weak points. And I don't really think that the gap between the Jaguars and the Titans and the Colts are as big as what a lot of people think. There are still people who believe that the Titans are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. I would digress. I kind of think that the Titans championship window has passed in a sense. And I don't really like judging teams based off windows and stuff like that. I think it's a bunch of media nonsense. But I think that Jacksonville does have a legitimate shot at winning this division. And if Trevor Lawrence ends up peaking, like I said, he is going to peak. He is going to be really good this year. He's most likely 9 times out of 10 going to end up being the best quarterback in this division. So if that happens, the chances of Jacksonville winning the AFC South increases. And on top of that, you don't have Urban Meyer as your head coach anymore. You have a head coach who's going to have you better prepared. And you also have somebody who knows what it takes to win in this league. So let me know how you guys feeling about the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I already know a lot of you guys are going to say that I'm tripping, I'm overrating Jacksonville. But I don't really think I'm overrating Jacksonville. I think that too many people are kind of overrating the rest of the other teams in this division, such as the Colts and the Titans. Because the Titans, you have a lot of questions at wide receiver. You don't have great depth there. And then for Indianapolis, you don't have great depth at wide receiver, and you don't have a lot of playmakers in your own right. So let me know how you guys feel about the Jacksonville Jaguars' chances of being able to go from worst to first in the AFC South in 2022.